Our guest today is Ryen Macababbad. Ryen is a U.S. Army veteran who served 8 years active duty, including 2 combat tours overseas in Iraq and Afghanistan. Prior to joining Microsoft, she also spent 5 years in the Army Reserves. In this session, Ryen will share how, as an active member of the security and veteran communities, she helps guide and mentor underrepresented populations in these communities to navigate their careers in the world of security and tech. And without further ado, I will turn it over to her. Ryen, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Ashley. I'm in Colorado and it snowed yesterday, so the Wi-Fi signal is a little bit odd. So I'm on my hotspot. Hopefully, we'll be able to get through it just fine. Otherwise, I'll probably just drop my video. Do I share my screen now? Let's see.
Yes.
Let me get to that. All right. So, as Ashley said, my name is Ryen Macababbad, and I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I actually spent 6 years in the reserves, concurrently with my time here at Microsoft. I really like to share my story because I feel like it helps to encourage other people to kind of step outside of their comfort bubble and try what seems kind of scary or uncomfortable. And so that's kind of why I share my story. So a little bit of background on me. When I was born, I actually was with my parents, like a lot of people are, but from there I actually became homeless and was only with one of my parents. And then I was entered into the foster care system, where I spent the next 10 years of my life. As a child, that was very traumatic for me because I moved from one home to another and what that did was created a instability. I never really got to set down my roots, and I never really had somebody that was there continuously, kind of providing encouragement, coaching, or direction. And so this really came into play when I went off to college, and I could not figure out what I wanted to do with my life. But the one thing that was really driving me was that I didn't want to be homeless again. Like, that was the thing that I just absolutely had to make sure it never happened. And so as I tried and failed a number of different things trying to find my passion, I finally entered the Army because one of the passions that I have is actually learning languages. And I found out that I could not only learn a language, but also get paid to do it through the Army. And so that's what I did. But it turns out that when I went to take the language test, the listening portion, I'm not an auditory learner, and that was very difficult for me. And so what ended up happening is that I didn't become a linguist, and I moved instead into tech. Now, before this, I hadn't had really any experience in tech. I didn't have my own computer growing up in school or anything like that. The only experience that I had with computers was writing college papers and just a brief introduction in high school, in a high school Excel class. But I fell in love with tech. It was so amazing for me. And it just, the way that my brain works, it was like it was natural for me to go through and do different things like component level repair or routing or system administration. And so I did that in the Army for the next 6 years or 5 years before leaving the military. So I left the military because of my second combat tour in Afghanistan. It was a very difficult tour, and it is the reason why I live with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, today. I actually have a service dog that goes with me everywhere to help me manage that PTSD. So when I decided to leave the military, again, I was faced with this challenge and this fear of being homeless. I could not allow myself to be homeless. But I was in the right place at the right time, and Microsoft was starting a program called the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. It still exists today. It's actually evolved a whole lot. And you can find out more about that if you would like to know at aka.ms/MSSA. But through this program, it was like, I think it was either 16 or 18 weeks, but I learned about Azure, I learned HTML5, I learned C#, I learned a number of different things in the cloud, and I fell in love again. And so that's kind of how I started my journey here at Microsoft. Once I joined Microsoft, I actually joined in, let me go to the next slide. I actually joined Microsoft as a software engineer, and I was in the Azure Active Directory group. And I transitioned from being a software engineer into program management because that was basically what my role was. We had started a new team, and so what we did was we worked with customers to help them with implementing the different features that were available in Azure Active Directory. And it was actually through this work that I discovered cybersecurity and fell in love with that. In 2017, when NotPetya was causing a lot of trouble and pain for a lot of companies and a lot of people by extension at those companies. What I found was that ingrained desire to defend and protect, it came alive again. And so that's when I decided to pivot my career into cybersecurity. Now, it's really difficult to pivot your career, especially when you don't really have any idea like who's involved, how to do it, how to leverage your skills that you have. And so what I decided was that after I went through that, I was going to share my experience with others and help them to gain the foothold that they needed in order to get started as well. And so my journey through Microsoft has really been a lot of identity and access management and a lot of security. But I will say that because of my background in the military, I really feel like that has accelerated my career growth. If you look at the bottom three roles that I've had, this is all in the last 2.5 years. So my career growth in 8 years at Microsoft has been pretty accelerated, and I really attribute that to my my experience in the military and the skills and leadership that I learned there. And so that's one thing that I would say for people who are looking to hire others into junior roles or even into more experienced roles, that looking at the veteran community, there's a very close relationship between how the security community functions and how the military functions. You'll see a lot of cross traits within the security community that you'll see within the military community. Things like attention to detail, operation security, and just a sense of what the bottom line is. Because for the military, for service members, the bottom line, it wasn't dollars, it wasn't infrastructure, it wasn't data, it was human lives. And so veterans really understand what that bottom line is. So I said that I attribute a lot of my success to my my military background, but I also want to really call out kind of my the other aspect of me that has really contributed to who I am today and how I work. So obviously, I am homeless. I already are formerly homeless. I told you guys about that, and formerly a foster kid, and a veteran. I am disabled, but it's an invisible disability, and so a lot of that can uh, people don't realize looking at you that you have a disability, and sometimes that can cause friction when you're trying to do work. For example, when I travel with my service dog, Legend, people don't realize when they first meet me, especially in this virtual world that we have now, that I'm disabled and then I'm going to be bringing a service dog with me wherever I go. And so sometimes that comes off as a surprise. I'm also not what you would call neurotypical. So I have ADHD, and so I struggle sometimes with interrupts and with staying focused. I have to constantly be challenged, and I have to constantly be learning something new. And that is actually a superpower. A lot of people who have ADHD, they have these same struggles, but it's boredom. Boredom is our kryptonite, right? I'm also a part of all of these other communities. I'm a woman. I'm part of the LGBTQ plus community. I didn't grow up in a typical home, as I said, but also my home life now is also multi-generational. So that means parents and grandkids all in the same, or grandparents and grandkids all in the same home. And that's kind of what my life is. And then with my success, I think that it's really important to call out that I don't have a bachelor's degree. I have an associate's in general studies, associate's in the arts and sciences of general studies, which, I mean, like, that's not something you put on a resume, right? But that's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share now, because that's just an introduction. I like to kind of start off with sharing with people like, hey, this is my experience and this is what I have to offer. This is why, what I'm saying might be able to help you. So I was at a veteran community, or a veteran, what is special forces. It was a special forces veteran event that was essentially to help those that were in the special forces that were getting ready to get out, help them with their transition. And this is something that's really near and dear to my heart because, as I said, it was a very scary experience for me. I really didn't want to be homeless. And when you're in the military, you have this mentality of we're doing this as a team, and all of our accomplishments are team accomplishments. And so it makes it really difficult to really talk about yourself. Anybody who's had to write an evaluation report for themselves probably understands this. But that's really what you have to do when you're getting started in the corporate world, in the private sector, because people don't want to know about what your team did. They want to know what value and impact you're going to bring to their team. Because those other people, they're not the ones that are being interviewed. And so while I was at this event, a lot of what I talked about were things that I think the group didn't really have a good grasp on. things like resume writing. So one of the things that I gave to them was, as a hiring manager, when I get a resume, it's really difficult for me to go through every single word and paragraph that's in there. So in order to remove a barrier for yourself, one of the things that you can do is to just put your summary at the top. This is like your resume elevator pitch, um, and then use that to kind of catch the reader's attention. And then you have your key attributes, the things that are going to be sprinkled throughout your different roles that are listed on your resume. And this is actually great advice for anyone, not just veterans, but anyone who's looking to kind of up level their resume. Is you want to grab the reader's attention, and you want to remove barriers for them to be interested in you. And so the way that you do this is by taking all of those sprinklings of skills and impact and really concisely summarizing them at the top. So when you look at my resume, you'll see, different key attributes like security, leadership, and trusted advisor, team management, team development. Those are all things that would fall on my resume. And a lot of veterans will have that as well. Those skills, team development, leadership, those are things that even someone who doesn't have direct reports in the military, they'll have learned skills like those, because we're constantly having to lead in different exercises. And so when we're writing our resumes, you really want to remove those barriers to entry, those barriers for the reader, right, to get interested in you. And so on the flip side, when you're a hiring manager, it's really important for you to, if you want to create strong, diverse teams, for you to actually look at going out to these different communities and really like either trying to meet them where they are and speak the language that they're speaking, or removing barriers for them to actually be able to talk to you. Because a lot of what happens is whether you're changing jobs or transitioning out of the military, a lot of what happens is that you don't understand the language that is being spoken. And I'm not talking about English or Spanish or Chinese or whatever, right? What I'm talking about is that the vernacular, the words that are being used and how they're being used within that sector. And so being able to describe your skills in the way that the reader is going to be able to directly apply that to the roles that they have open, and vice versa, right? When you're looking to hire, when you're writing those job descriptions, you want to be able to attract diverse talent by using language that's really inclusive and that can apply to a lot of different populations. And there are different tools out there that can help you with doing this. So I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and do a lot of coaching and mentorship there. Also on Twitter, you'll see me telling people, not to, because a lot of what we deal with in security is imposter syndrome, and so you'll see that sprinkled throughout Twitter, and you'll see that also with a lot of the underrepresented groups. What you'll see is that there is not only a strong imposter syndrome and inner critic that is constantly hammering at these folks, but also an inability to really describe what their strengths are, because they just don't know. And so one of the things that I do is I will talk to people and just kind of get an idea of what their background is, and where they want to go with their lives, what is really interesting to them, if they got paid to do exactly what they love doing, what would that look like? And what is the tax that they're willing to pay to be able to do that? So I kind of look at it from a 75-25% aspect, where if you want to do something like help grow people, I'm talking about my passions now, help grow people, but and be in security, and still also be technical. Those are things that I love, and that's the 75% that I want to do every day. I want to, be able to encourage both individual contributors and also managers to be better employees, to be better managers, to really push that servant leadership. And so what's the tax that I'm willing to pay? What's the 25% of things that I don't really enjoy doing, but I'll do it just so that I can do this other 75%? And so those would be like things like approving expense reports, or not approving expense reports, those kinds of things. And that's the tax that I'm willing to pay. Doing the additional training that's required of managers, that's a tax I'm willing to pay, because I get to do all of this really awesome stuff that helps me refill my cup. And so what I found is that by doing this, I built up a network of people who also knew other people like them, who were knew other women, or knew other people from different ethnic backgrounds, or knew other veterans who were also trying to get into security or get into tech. And so there's this constant pipeline of people who are wanting assistance and wanting help. And that has really helped to grow me as both a manager, and I think just as a human in general, because I get to experience a lot of different perspectives and different backgrounds and different challenges. And so I do this on Twitter, I do this on LinkedIn, I do this internally. But the thing that I hear a lot is that, well, I can't get people to apply to my jobs. I'm only getting this type of person applying to my roles. And one of the things that we really need to take into account is that most of the time, people don't just search out and apply to roles. That's not how they get them, right? All of my roles in the last 6 years have been ones that I went out and I found through my network. I talked to people and I said, hey, I'm really interested in working with you. I'm really interested in working on this technology. I'm really interested in being a manager. Really interested in being in security, and that's how I got into those roles. And that's true for a lot of positions. And so if these jobs are being filled through a person's network, or the network of that person's network, then you really have a responsibility, like hiring managers in general really have a responsibility to go outside, deliberately go outside of their networks. One of the things that I found really successful for me is actually I asked people who worked with me and who worked for me, some of my direct reports, to share the roles that I was hiring for. And so what they did was they took the role and they shared it on LinkedIn, but they also said some really nice things. This is a manager that you want to work for. This is someone who gets things done. This is someone who will help you grow your career. And so what I did is I took all of those things and I put them in a one-by-one frame, like the IG shape, right? And I used that to advertise my roles. And I advertise my roles in women in tech communities, in Latino or Latinx communities, LGBTQ, the veteran communities as well, and a plethora of other groups. And I directly went to those groups in order to advertise these roles. And because of that, I had no trouble, first of all, with filling my roles. The hardest thing was actually in deciding between all of the amazing talent that applied to my roles. And so we have a lot of friction and in getting people from diverse backgrounds, or really it's not even about being from a diverse background. It's really about having diverse perspectives, right? Because innovation comes from creativity, and you're not going to get creativity if everybody is thinking the same way. And so you really need those diverse backgrounds, those diverse perspectives in order to continue to innovate. And so that's kind of where I've spent a lot of my time, is mentoring and coaching people on how to get through the automated application filters. ATS, I think is what it is. And how to reach out and talk to people in the net outside of their networks and build their networks, but also for managers who are looking to build diverse teams, showing them the ways that they can encourage people to apply to their roles. I think that for our veteran community, what I see, and you see this with women a lot as well, is that we won't apply to roles unless we meet like 100% of the job requirements. I think that we see like 70 other populations will apply if they meet 40 to 70% of the requirements. And so what that tells us is that, one, we really need to look at our requirements and what we're saying that we want, because there's a difference between what's actually a requirement and what's a nice to have. Because I can teach somebody the tech. If they don't have the background in the tech that I need, I can teach that to them. And outside of a startup, and we have a lot of those within Microsoft, outside of a startup, you don't have to, when you're growing your team, you don't have to hire somebody who has the exact technical background or on that specific technology. You can teach that to people as long as they have the technical aptitude, as long as they have the familiarity, right? And that's easy to teach. What's hard to teach is people who will be dedicated to their work, who will have a passion for their work, who think in a way that leads to creative solutions and enjoy problem solving. Those are things that are hard to teach. But the technical stuff, I can teach people that. And so I think when it comes to job requirements, that's something that's really difficult. So outside of that, I think one, I try and encourage people to really apply for jobs and look at jobs from the perspective of, can I do this job? And less about whether or not you meet 100% of the requirements. And also teach people to change the language in their job descriptions. So I think that's mostly what I have. Ashley, do we have any questions that I can answer?
Have some basic questions. People are wondering if they can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. In fact, if you are a member of any of these underrepresented communities that we talked about, I would be happy to take a look at your resume. Now, given that we're doing this as a public broadcast and this is going to happen over time, likely it will take a little bit of time for me to actually go through and give you insights on your resume if you're going to send me your resume. I don't have any open headcount, so I can't hire you. So I'll just put that out. But yeah, happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. I also have some articles and videos. I used to do pre-pandemic. I did this Ask Ryen session. I'd like to get it started again. And if you send me your questions, that will help me get started again. So absolutely.
I just shared your LinkedIn with the audience here, so hopefully
Great.
you'll get
Thank you so much.
Of course, but isn't it amazing how how the languages that we speak shapes the way we think? It's the folks here, Ryan, Ashley, and Jason. I always tell them that try to avoid scheduling Monday meetings with me because it takes me a few hours to iron out my English after a full speaking weekend in Albanian. So maybe perhaps you can just share with us the languages you speak and how they impact your daily life.
Yeah, sure. So so I go to Chile pretty often, and so one of the languages I speak is Spanish. I'm not fluent in it by any stretch, but I'm trying to get there. I learned Arabic in the military, so I really actually enjoyed learning Arabic. I think it's a beautiful language, particularly in written form. But it's not something that I use very often. I use Spanish probably daily. I also learned American Sign Language, and that has really added a lot of value to my life. I've had opportunities in the past where someone from the deaf community was struggling with like a store attendant, and I was able to assist. And so like knowing these different languages is really awesome. But then the other language that I know is military, right? Because that is completely different than what we speak every single day in corporate America. And so one of the things that I see a lot on resumes is just military speak. It's just like acronym after acronym, which I mean, at Microsoft, we have lots of acronyms, but it's talking about things that no one outside of the military will know. And so that's something that I get people to describe differently a lot. And also we tend to only put in the roles that we had the title for, but the skills and the things that we did in the military is actually usually far outside of what our actual military occupational specialty was. And so like learning that language and teaching people how to speak corporate speak on their resume, or when they're doing their elevator pitch, or when they're just networking, is something that that's a powerful skill. And that's something that I think it offers a lot of value. So if you have the ability to speak military and to speak corporate, help someone out, help a service member who's trying to transition, help a veteran who's trying to get into tech, and help them to speak the language, right? That's one of the most difficult hurdles to get over.
Cool. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, go ahead, Ashley. Sorry.
Oh, I just have another question. For someone who maybe wants to get into like mentoring or becoming a mentor, but just doesn't know where to start, do you have any advice for how to do that?
Yeah, so I kind of fell into mentorship on accident because I really enjoy teaching, but coming from the military into Microsoft, I was like, well, I don't know anything, this is a whole new world to me. But one of the things that I did was I joined groups that were like early in career groups, and I actually started offering out on LinkedIn, and anytime that I speak, that I'm willing to mentor. I have on my LinkedIn profile that I'm open for mentorship. And then there are a couple of people who do this thing on Mondays, Mentor Mondays on Twitter, that will actually, you can say, hey, I need a mentor, or hey, I would love to mentor. But the thing, I think if you want to mentor, it's really difficult for people to ask for a mentor. And so the best way to mentor is to remove that barrier and just talk to people. And you don't even have to make it formal, to be honest. A lot of the mentorship relationships that I have, they didn't start out with, hey, will you mentor me? Or, hey, can I be your mentor? It was just like, oh, you have an issue that you're dealing with. How can I help you? Here are my thoughts on it. If you're willing to, if you're interested in listening to it, and then it kind of just spread by word of mouth. So removing the barrier to entry, I think, as a mentor, and seeking other people out, and like people who just join your team, or people who are early in career, or people who are asking for help on LinkedIn or Twitter. Like, you can literally just say, hey, I'm willing to help you. And that's probably the way that I would go about it.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really really good advice. Let me see if there's any other questions here. I think we have.
I've got one here. Ryen, are there any key pieces of advice you find yourself giving frequently when you're mentoring folks?
Yeah. Actually, a lot of it is on the Ask Ryen stuff, because I kept getting that question. So what do I do? What do I do when I'm working with my resume? I gave those examples. What do I do when I'm having a conflict? So I'm on a new team, and I seem to be having a conflict with someone else. I think the thing that we do very often as humans, as part of our biology, is this negativity bias, right? And that is literally from our our caveman days, right? Because we needed that negativity bias to alert us to danger. Well, a lot of times that can cause a lot of problems in our relationships, both personal and professional relationships, because we might assume negative intent rather than assume good intent. And I think that when you assume good intent until someone very deliberately or obviously says, like, no, I don't want to be your friend, or name calling or anything like that. If you approach things with assume good intent, that was probably the best advice that I ever got, because I was constantly feeling like threatened, like people were thinking that I wasn't supposed to be there, or that I had gotten there because I was a woman and I was a diversity checkbox, right? And so I kept thinking this, and that actually, I internalized that so much that the way that my behavior was outwardly was this feeling defensive, feeling threatened, feeling like I had something to prove, and feeling like people were not as welcoming as I felt like, you know, I would like. But when I flipped that and I changed it to assuming good intent, then suddenly my outward behavior changed. And so that's one of the things that I get a lot is, well, I don't know how to resolve this conflict. And that has changed a lot of people's approaches to relationships, and I think that that's something to really like keep in mind. The other thing that I get a lot is it just flew out of my mind. Is how do I've been applying to all of these jobs. I've been applying to all of these jobs and I haven't gotten any callback. And the thing I'll say is, going back to my point earlier, is that you know, you can apply to the jobs, and I do encourage you to continue to do that. But there's a couple of things that you should keep in mind when you're doing that. One, tailor your resume for each job that you're applying for. You want to look at that job description and you want to use the language that's in that job description in your resume. You know, because if your resume is reflecting the job description, then that's going to really help you. And then use your network, build your network, so that you can get your resume in front of people. If you can get a referral from someone, an internal referral is worth so much. And you know, sometimes people will be unwilling to do an internal referral if they've never worked with you before. But you won't know unless you ask. The answer is always no for the questions that go unasked, right? And so I would say ask. Yeah, I think those are probably the things that I get asked the most.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really good advice. That yeah, are kind of like the way we think really like creates our reality around us. So if we're thinking negative all the time, that's what it's going to be. Well, I think we have all the questions. Thank you. Oh, here we do have another one. How would you say your PTSD has affected or impacted your leadership style or capabilities?
I freaking love that question. Thank you so much for asking that. Whoever asked that, let me know, because I love that question. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer it. I think that my PTSD and my willingness to be open and honest and vulnerable about my PTSD has really created an environment where my team, the teams that I've had, have given me verbatims like, I feel safe here because you're willing to be vulnerable. I've never felt the ability to truly be myself, because of expectations, and I feel like I can be more of myself because you shared your vulnerability. I feel like your leadership style is very supportive, and helps me look at growing my career instead of just like, because I always encourage people to think about what they want after the role that they have with me, because this is probably not going to be their last role, right? So I think that so what was it, a year and a half ago or a year ago, I won the top manager award for security within Microsoft, and it was a Technology Solutions Excellence Award. And it was because of this. It was because I was able to show that like being vulnerable is not a weakness. It's a strength to be able to show that, you know what, some days I have bad days. Some days I have migraines. Some days my tinnitus is just like shh, and I can't even listen to anything. And that's okay. You know, that's why we have sick days. That's why flex schedules are super awesome, right? Because when I have a migraine, if I need to take a few hours to just be in a dark room, I can do that. Or if I'm having an anxiety attack, I can take myself away from work and go for a walk for a couple hours, or go outside and build something in my shed for a little while and take that break so I can reset. And I'm very open with my team about doing this. And what that means is, one, that they're much more willing to share their own vulnerabilities, and to be open, at least with me. Like, maybe they're not, you know, comfortable doing that with their peers, but at least with me. And so I know what's going on, and I have the opportunity. They give me the gift, the opportunity to be able to help them. And then it also creates an awesome work-life balance, because people know that they can work when it's best for them, and they don't feel, or at least they can better fight the feelings of guilt that they might experience having to take time off work. I know one person I had felt really guilty when they had to take time off work because of an injury. And you know, I expressed to them, like, the work is going to be there. It's going to be there when you come back. And you know, having them be able to come back to work with their best self, and be able to provide their best work, because they were taking the time to take care of themselves. That willingness to take care of themselves is super important. If we don't create environments where our employees feel safe to take the time that they need to take care of themselves, then we're not going to get the best that they have to offer. We're not going to allow them to really demonstrate their true potential, because they're, you know, especially in security, burnout is real. And so, like, having that and providing that environment and that vulnerability allows people to take care of themselves and avoid burnout, and really come and bring their best work. So thank you so much for asking that question. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think that's all of our questions. So thank you, Ryen, for being our guest today, for the excellent presentation and the great advice. At the same time, I would like to remind the listeners that the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements is to visit our landing page at aka.ms/securitycommunity. And while there, you'll find easy ways to navigate and find the resources and learning content relevant to our security products and their communities. A good start would be browsing our bite-sized product videos, ninja trainings, recordings of past webinars, GitHub communities, and more. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars. Please take a minute submitting your webinar feedback at aka.ms/security webinar feedback. Thank you, and see you next time. Goodbye.